So last summer you were in New York, correct? Like about a
Correct.
year ago.
Yeah.
And I was with another group of friends, and we were all staying in my apartment, and you started to tell and eventually told the entire story of a UFO experience that you had. And I was fascinated the entire time. This was also, around the time I had started to listen to conversations that were coming out in the podcast hemisphere. And so let's start from the beginning. What happened leading up to that day? What were you doing? What was your job? Where were you at in life? And set the tone for that day and that experience before we jump into the details of that day.
Yeah. So this is early January or mid-January 2012. And so I'm a couple years out of college. I am very new into my financial planning career. Maybe been in the career a year, been at this firm maybe 6 months. And myself and another young guy, a couple years older than me, guy by the name of Dan, kind of no nonsense, no bullshit, New Yorker, right? Y'all would really get along, frankly. Sounds
like it.
Yeah, hell yeah. But he and I found in our firm there was a bunch of accounts from an old office that had closed down 10 15 years ago down in Southwest Virginia, maybe 3.5 4 hours away. So there's a cluster of accounts, and nobody was really servicing these accounts, and they were all spread out. They were old insurance policies. And Dan and I went to our manager and asked if we could get the accounts, and we'll give him 10%, but no more. And we want to go and have these accounts, and, yada, yada. And he said, sure, go. Right. So I found myself driving down to Southwest Virginia, in and through the Appalachian Mountains, once or twice or 3 or 4 times a month. And so we'd visit with people. We'd try to, see what kind of policies they had, did anything change, et cetera, et cetera. And so I found myself in the car a lot. And we found ourselves in, remote-ish places on a relatively regular basis. So I was on one of those trips, one of those financial planning trips, when said incident occurred.
And when you were on your way down to this office in Southern Virginia, driving through the mountains of Southern Virginia, what was the first cue to you that something was not normal? Like, regardless what the experience was, this was a cue or something you were picking up that you're like, this is not something that is a normal experience?
Yeah, so we'd had a pretty normal day, and we had left, we're maybe 30 minutes into our 3.5 4 hour drive home, and we were not taking the highway. So we were instead taking like real back roads, right? My phone was already dead, right? I'd been on it texting the whole day probably. So I was, my phone was dead. Dan was driving, and it's wintertime. It's around 8 p.m. So it's dark. And the first thing that really set off as like weird was we both commented that we hadn't seen anybody on the road in a while, and that it was super dark, and wow. And then Dan said, dude, my phone just lost all its juice. I'm going to turn it off in case we need it. Right. Mm-hmm. So Dan turned his phone off because it lost a whole bunch of juice.
So it was at a good amount of juice, and then the juice just dropped precipitously.
We're at 3 bars. Then he's got a blinking red bar worth of juice, and we find that to be strange. And I remember specifically him turning off his phone for low battery, a weird low battery, and he turned off his phone in case we need it.
Got it.
And there's a lot of things.
Probably a good idea. It's probably
yeah.
I mean, I not knowing what's going to happen, I'd probably do the same thing. I'd be like, we don't know if we're driving on a fucking mountain road in Virginia, it would probably be a good idea to have some reserve battery in case, something happens, car breaks down, or else we're just fucking sitting out here until someone finds us or we can walk to the closest town. And so while Dan was driving, he turns his phone off. What was the next thing that happened?
So I'm got my seat leaned back and I'm just kind of looking out the front windshield, and he's telling a story, and I don't know what his story's about, listening to tunes, and I noticed 2 red lights like way the fuck up in the sky, right? Like not star distance, but definitely in the plane distance / maybe further. I don't know, right?
What's the light like at this time? Is it completely dark? Is it kind of like twilight? What does
Dark,
the sky
dark,
look
dark.
like? Dark. Okay.
Dark, very dark. I don't remember there being a moon. It was really dark. 8 p.m. in the middle of winter. So definitely dark. And the 2 red lights were really close together, and they were moving like very erratically, right? Like plane, pretty steady speed and straight. Satellite blinks, you lose it for a little bit. Blinks, you lose it for a little bit, but it's a pretty straight line, right? This was jerky, right? Like very erratic with its movement, right? And over the next couple of minutes, 1, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, I followed with my eyes these 2 red lights got bigger and closer to the ground, and ultimately to the point where I found myself like looking up under Dan's arms, his one arm that he's driving, and I'm like trying to peer underneath him to see out the driver's side window.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, he's like, yo, what the fuck are you looking at? And
yeah. Are the 2 red lights, while they're moving, are they moving around herky jerky together? Like they're part of the same thing? Or,
yeah.
Okay. So it looked like the 2 lights are jerking around in unison, like wherever one light goes, the others go.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So they're not like spreading apart, but if they like zip to bottom left, both lights are zipping to bottom left. If it's turned on its side, both are turning on its side, right? So I'm seeing like one thing, right? One object. And ultimately I saw that object go from, plane height, plane distance in the fucking sky down to ground level, to the point where I'm seeing red lights through the trees and going, holy shit, Dan, what are these? And I remember Dan saying, what, you're talking about the cell tower over there? And I said, dude, this cell tower was just 30,000 feet in the air 2 minutes ago. And, I remember him going, no fucking way. And then it couldn't have been like 15 seconds later before we bank left, the road opens up into a big ass field, and here we are.
And so to back up a little bit.
I'm backing up.
Obviously something about these lights caught your eye right away, because it's dark out, you're in the middle of a country road. If you see a plane in the middle of nowhere, you kind of just like, you see the lights and nothing really jumps out at you consciously or subconsciously. And you're like, that's traveling in a straight line. That's a plane. And then that's the end of it. You're not tracking it. You're not looking at it. You're not being like, that plane was here 30 seconds ago and now it's over here. Maybe that's not a plane. So something about it. And it sounds like the speed of which it was moving, the irregularity of the movements, jerking around, kind of in this erratic behavior, that was what was standing out to you the most?
For sure. And I think that having the knowledge of my grandparent or my granddad going through that, like without having that story in the back of my head and like such a vivid memory or story of mine growing up, I wouldn't have been necessarily even open to fixating my eyes on that for long enough to see something weird happen,
And so it's at a point right now where Dan mistook it for a cell tower. So it went from something that was around the plane height, jerking around, all of a sudden it makes its way down to, I'm imagining what is, almost ground level, but like a little above. And it looks like a cell tower in the distance to Dan out his driver's side.
His 9 o'clock, like to his direct left out the driver's side window. It looks like a, red lights, cell tower height, a couple 100 feet off the ground, 100 feet off the ground, whatever, through the trees.
And so when Dan says, what are you talking about? That cell tower over there? And then it opens up. You said you bank left and you're driving through a field. What is your position now relative to those two lights, and what starts to happen?
So we bank left. It opens up. That quote unquote cell tower is now directly in front of a road, or like directly over the road, which is a straight road. We're heading directly into this thing. It's maybe 100, 200, 300 feet off the road. And, you know, for a real lack of better terms and this far into the conversation, I could say that I turn a corner and I'm driving straight into a spaceship. Quite fucking literally. Like a massive, massive, massive craft. So as soon as we turn and Dan sees this, Dan immediately goes, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? Right, over and over and over again. And I'm on a oh my god type just loop. And it took 10 seconds to process this thing, right? So quite literally, you know, we turn a corner and dead ass straight the fuck in front of us that we're driving towards is a craft of some type that is not looking in any way, shape, or form like anything that I've ever seen in my eyes from humans, right? Many plane sizes big. This is not like a one little plane. This isn't like a Cessna, you know, little plane, like the little tiny UFOs. This isn't like a Tic Tac UFO. This is like the mothership size, bro. And it's just directly in front of me and we're driving into it.
What sort of shape was it? What was it? Like the prototypical what people think of the saucer? What was it, more of elongated? What shape were you actually seeing from the ship from your angle? Because I assume you're underneath it, kind of like watching it get bigger.
Yes.
Above you.
Yes, and it was a kind of a rectangular shape, but a big rectangle, right? And the red lights, you know, think of like left side, right side, right? That's where the red lights are. Right. I don't remember whether they're top, middle, bottom, or whatever it is, but I remember seeing those red lights on one of the corners of each of these things.
Yeah. So just one light on either side.
Bingo. Excuse me. And then as we're turning the corner and driving into this thing, like if the windshield is the size that I'm, you know, kind of looking at, we're a half mile away or so, and it's like a good 2 feet of size taking up the windshield, like still pretty far away from it. Like it's a big thing. Once I see it with my eyes clearly, I never see it move. I never see it sway. I never see it shift. I never see it go up or down an inch or left to right an inch. It was cemented in the sky.
So it was very still. None of like, if you think of a helicopter moving, even when a helicopter is still, it's still like bouncing from side to side. There was none of that typical kind of like stalling aircraft movement that you would imagine.
Not a millimeter of it. It was cemented in the sky, directly over the road. And, you know, I kind of had this freak out and I'm trying to process. And then the next thing that I notice that kind of pulls me back into the present moment is I feel the car accelerate hard. And Dan had like stopped on the gas. And then he shifted from like, what the fuck is that, to what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Right. And so I wanted him to slow down. I told him to slow down. And I wanted to see like if it's making any noise. Because I already noticed and can process that it's not moving. And I can notice and process that it's big as fuck. And that we're driving like right into it. So I'm like, all right, maybe it's like some like I'm trying to hear an engine, basically. And I got Dan to slow down. He slowed down to like 20, 25 miles an hour, to the point where I was able to hang on to the oh shit bar and like sit on the window. So like roll the windows down, sit on the window, hang on to the old shit bar. So my torso is like outside of the window. And it was a beautiful, clear, crisp, cold winter day. Not a sound, not a murmur was in the air, you know? So it was totally silent, totally still.
So if you closed your eyes, you would, like a blind person wouldn't have thought anything was up. They would have been like, we're just driving through a country back road.
Yep. It's literally like they forgot to turn cloak mode on.
Yeah.
And
That's what I was that's what I was imagining. I was like, that sounds like they were just doing some recon, and they were chilling there, and someone on the ship or whoever they're controlling it from is like back home. It's like, oh fuck, like dude, you accidentally sat on the switch, like fucking turn that shit back on.
Exactly. Or like somehow like the guy that was supposed to be like guarding the cars like was taking a shit when we were driving through and like didn't pick up that we were supposed to be there because it was so blatantly obvious that something is up and that this is not like there was no hint of that we're trying to keep this from you in any way, shape, or form. It was almost like, yo, motherfuckers, we're here now.
Yeah. That some guy got a talking to at the Alien Explorer HR, HQ.
God.
Some guy was like, "Yo, dude, you gotta leave stealth mode on when we got those small things running around Earth in the area. I don't know what they are, but we'll figure it out."
Seriously.
You said you were positioning yourself out the window trying to hear something. So you're driving towards it still. You said Dan started to accelerate. You got both the windows down, I assume, just like trying to hear anything.
Yep.
What's the next new piece of information? Just like anything, it starts to get bigger as expected. You're driving closer, so it's going to start looking bigger. You're driving under the lights are getting brighter. What's kind of the next thing that you feel or see as you start to approach and accelerate this craft or thing?
I don't think I lost time or anything like that, but I really do feel like time slowed down because once I realized that there was no sound coming out of it, then there was no more like instant logical explanations for what I saw, and thus was able to really settle in pretty immediately into holy fuck. And that's literally what I said as I drove underneath this thing. Like, I realized, oh my God, it's not making any sound. In the next 10 seconds of us driving towards it, and as it gets bigger and bigger, it's just me just going, oh my God, as I passed underneath it. And if a rock was dropped from the dead ass center of that alien or whatever that thing was, it would have hit us in the dead ass center of the windshield. And, it did light up a little bit underneath. I remember very vividly, but unclearly seeing, like, the memory is vivid, but I remember the image being unclear of the bottom of this thing. And it was pretty dark, but I got a little bit of the light from the red light on this side and what I found out to be like a white light, a small white light on the other side. But it was no lights underneath. There were no doors underneath. I couldn't see any portals. There was nothing like that. It just looked textured. It looked like almost as if you were seeing a mountain range from, 20,000 feet, just like textured,
Okay, so almost like the surface of the moon or something like
that.
Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. What I might consider, or what people might consider, like an anti-radar type looking thing, right?
Okay.
Or like anti-radar texture or whatever.
What color was it besides the red lights? Were you able to tell what color the actual material was?
Dark black. Yeah. Once we drove underneath it, I kind of like turned, shifted my body and looked at it as it kept getting smaller and smaller. And over the next 30 seconds, it just slowly disappeared from my line of sight. And, I sunk back into my chair and Dan was kind of hunched over the driving wheel. And I remember like seeing him like knead the driving wheel and like the handle. And we didn't talk for about 10 minutes. And then he broke the silence with... So
you guys were sitting there silently
for
10 minutes.
For at least 10 minutes.
Taking it in.
And like I was kind of slumped back. He was kind of hunched over. And he takes a big breath. I remember him going, well, that changes everything. And dude, straight out of a movie. It was fucking perfect. And I laughed my ass off and we were like, what the fuck was that? And started to like freak out. Going back to that, being there, I never felt threatened. I never felt I wasn't scared. I was shocked. Right. And I think there's a big difference between those two things. For me, is like, it was astounding versus like frightening. And, you know, again, I like going right underneath it. I don't know whether we lost time. I don't have any memories of anything. I haven't had any weird dreams or flashbacks or operating tables. You know, I haven't found anything in my ass. You know, I've looked, right? I haven't found
You haven't found anything in your ass from the aliens.
From the aliens, right? Exactly.
You haven't found anything that you didn't put there.
Yeah. But you know, I think the biggest thing was like, it was so vivid and it was so real, and it wasn't anything that could be explained away, and it wasn't anything that, this was about as sure of a thing as I could experience. And I got to experience with someone who I was close with and still am pretty close with. And so, you know, thank God I wasn't solo dolo for this thing. That would have driven me fucking mad,
100%.
dude. But, you know, I didn't feel like they were bad.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. As a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full, uncut, 2+ hour episodes of the Auxoro podcast, plus gain access to 2 bonus episodes every month at auxoro.supercast.tech. Link is also in the description. Thank you so much for supporting quality content from independent creators like myself. Cheers.